Hello, travel biz owner. Welcome to my corner of the travel industry, the Strategic Travel Entrepreneur Podcast. If you're ready to have fun, be inspired, get clarity, and take action in your travel business, then you're in the right place. Let's jump in. Hello, friends. Welcome back to the Strategic Travel Entrepreneur Podcast. If you're new around here, my name is Rita M. Perez, and we talk about the business owner side of things as being a travel agency owner. And today's episode, there's been a lot of trends and forecasts. I guess it is the season for survey data to be coming out, and heavily on the cruise side of things. So I wanted to share some of those, and I wanted to also kind of talk about a little bit of the psychographics and how you can use them. I also wanted to give a shout out to Kelly Hayes Smith with Wanderlust Campus, because she kind of inspired that, because she mentioned the first report, that is the AAA report. So I'll cover that one first. And then I got an email about Travel Market's report about river cruising. So we'll touch on both of those. But first, I am conducting a quick little survey myself about the Strategic Travel Entrepreneur Podcast. So if you can just take a quick pause, head into the show description of your podcast player app, and click on the link that will say something like submit your feedback or send me your thoughts on the podcast, because this is going to help me shape the content coming into 2026. I already have a couple of ideas out there, but really, it's my podcast, but it's your podcast. You won't keep listening to me if I don't keep putting out information that you all like or that you need for your business. So let me know everything from what are your favorite types of episodes? What are some guests that you would love to hear? Maybe not even guest names, but what guest kind of topics, because I love bringing guest experts here as well. What are your favorite types of episodes? I feel like you like the juicy ones where I share some of my personal entrepreneurship journey and goals and things like that. So yeah, if you can just fill that out, it should be quick, no more than 10 questions on there. I would really appreciate your help with that. So first things first, let's chat on that AAA report, and I will be sure to link that also, so that you can take a quick look at that as well. It's been a while since we've done one of these, looking at the stats and things. So 2026 is really poised to be a great year for cruising. I'm hearing cruising is doing well for lots of travel advisors now. So if your business isn't where it needs to be at or where you want it to be at in terms of sales and revenue, maybe looking into cruising is going to be one of those things for you. According to this article, it says AAA is forecasting that the year-over-year increase will be 8.4%, an 8.4% jump from 2024 to 2025, and a 4.5% bounce from 2025 to 2026. These numbers reflect the growing demand of ocean cruises for U.S. travelers. Their travel advisors are seeing these types of trends. When I look... They have a graph in here. When I look at this graph, I giggle, because in 2019, 14.2 million Americans were cruising in 2019. And of course, that dramatically dropped in 2020 and 2021. 2021 is when cruising finally opened back up later that summer/fall. And then we got a little pickup in 2022, but the big, where we superseded 2019's numbers was 2023, and they just keep going up little by little by little year over year, which is pretty cool to see. So they are seeing people of all ages going on cruises, but especially 65% of adult U.S. passengers are 55 or older. 27% are aged 35 to 54. So I feel like that's millennials, because I fall in that category. So millennials, but also, is it Gen X? Gen X, yes, that are ahead. And then 7% everybody else that's younger. And it says, regardless of age, most adults are taking a +1 on the ship, which is super interesting, even though there are still 7% that are still cruising solo. And then 20% are cruising with kids. That's also very interesting to know that most people are not cruising with children, but the next bracket of cruisers are those people, the family that are sailing, my words, with children. What types of ships are they booking? Ocean cruises come in different sizes, but as demand grows, so are the ships. Mega vessels are rising in popularity, especially in the Caribbean, where most of them sail, because that's really the only places that they can sail. The report didn't say that, but if you don't know, a lot of the mega ships sail a lot of the Caribbean and can only sail the Caribbean because of their great magnitude of size. Because I start thinking of things like bridges and, we have the lock system and the Panama Canal. So that does limit what types of ships can sail on different itineraries and different destinations. It doesn't mean that mega vessels can't sail everywhere, but they are limited. Like the smaller, more intimate ports, that's going to be those smaller, like yacht type ships. They're mostly deployed in the Caribbean, the Mediterranean, and Northern Europe, which kind of tracks based on just if you look geographically where they're based out of. In contrast, smaller vessels hold a greater share in Northern Europe and the Mediterranean, which, again, that makes complete sense because especially in the summer season, you're going to see a lot of yachting being hugely popular. And then not only that, but again, the smaller ships are able to get to more intimate ports. So those larger ships are very much restricted where they can go. And typically where the smaller ships go, their clientele doesn't want to be going where the larger ships are. So really interesting to see that. And also interesting to see that there is a huge presence of the expedition cruises, that they are really gaining some sort of market share out there. They're gaining in popularity. And I see this because there's like an expedition cruise network that was recently built. I believe CLIA in Europe just had their first expedition cruise kind of conference a couple months ago. So there is a new found love or passion for these expedition type of cruises, which are these much smaller cruise vessels. And they're able to not only just get closer to destination, but typically on these expedition ships, you're able to take one of the smaller, I don't want to say it's a dinghy. I forget what they're called now. I'm going to remember that word and I'm going to bring it up again. The Zodiacs. See, there we go. They have the smaller Zodiacs that you're able to, I know, especially for Galapagos, instead of because there's no place for a lot of these expedition ships to dock. So you'll port or your dock right in the ocean, and then you'll take a Zodiac to take you to the islands or take you exploring around the islands as well. I feel like a lot of the things that are in the AAA report aren't really that surprising because they also go into when are people cruising, and the peak Caribbean season, if you didn't know, is actually the off season. So it's the fall winter months. So it goes November to March. Summer season, you might think, is peak season when it comes to Caribbean cruising, at least, but it's not. It's the off peak season. And that's a lot because the ships are going to different places in the summer because they can. Like Alaska, you can only do spring, summer. You can't do during that off season. Similarly with the Mediterranean, you can cruise off season, but especially if you suffer from motion sickness, you may not have an amazing time through there. A lot of the top embarkation ports are here in Florida, Miami, followed by Port Canaveral, and then Fort Lauderdale. Galveston, I know, has been having they've been working on their port a lot, so they're able to accommodate some of these larger ships and more ships as well. So I know Galveston, that's in the number 4 when it comes to the embarkation and departure ports for 2026. And then rounding out number 5 is Barcelona, which is pretty interesting with everything that we've heard in the news in terms of like Barcelona and tourists and all that. But a lot of like the bigger ships in Barcelona don't really dock near the heart of Barcelona. They're a little bit out. Because I remember when we sailed on the Star Legend a couple years ago, we were able to dock and like walk right into Barcelona. Like there's a little bit of a walk, but it's not like the other ships where you're definitely going to have to be bussed in. Some of the other ones that round out the top 10 are Southampton, Rome or Civitavecchia, Marseille, Seattle, and Singapore. And again, most travelers are heading towards the Caribbean. This is interesting to me. Then they're going to Alaska, and then third is the Mediterranean. And then kind of really what's more in second place is the rest of the world. So we have 72% going to Caribbean, 7 to Alaska, 5 to Mediterranean, and 16 to the rest of the world. Just mentioned that a lot of them are sailing to the Caribbean. I think it's just so stinking easy to go to the Caribbean or to go to Mexico via a cruise from the United States versus the other ones where you really, in the United States, you can drive to a home port fairly easy depending on where you're going from. But obviously, if you're going to other countries, there does involve a little bit more travel when it comes to that. The other cool thing about this AAA report is what they're saying about how cruise passengers rate their experiences. And it's saying that 90% rate a cruise experience as very good or good, and 91% of cruisers have taken multiple cruises. And this, I feel, is like where you really have to focus on. Like, if you've been stumped or anything, cruising might be one of those niches that you might want to break into, because especially knowing that people have taken multiple, over 91% of people have taken multiple cruises, there is longevity with that client relationship once you bring them on one cruise. And like Corrine Johnson of Travel Biz Boss likes to mention, not only is there longevity there, kind of like coupled with longevity, it's easier to sell cruising to people who have been on cruises, and it's easier to like make that next booking when they're on their current cruise, because many of these cruise lines, or all of them, I'm not exactly sure if they all do, but you're able to book your future cruise on your current cruise. So it just makes it even easier of a sell. I mentioned this too because if you're trying to get a little bit more work-life balance within your business, this might be one of the routes that you go. In here, it does mention cruising appeals to couples because the ship offers date night opportunities all day long, which is really neat. And I feel like you could definitely use that for your marketing, especially if you are trying to garner like more couples or double income, no kids type of vacations. Use pin marketing off that. Like stop this marketing about like why you should use a travel advisor to book a cruise. It needs to be more on the consumer. So what are the different ways that people can experience date night? Maybe it's, have you not had a date night in a year since the kids were born? Maybe it's your time to go on your next cruise where you can experience date night every night on your cruise. You see those marketing messages kind of happening. So yeah, we're dropping the selfish type of marketing and we're going to the client forward type of marketing. Multi-generational families enjoy the variety of activities and amenities, and many say cruise vacations are more economical than booking flights and hotel rooms, especially if they want to visit multiple countries. To appeal to younger people and more adventurous travelers, many cruise lines are offering expedition cruises from the Arctic to Antarctica, and that's kind of what one of the marketing trends that we're kind of seeing with the younger demographics when it comes to like Gen Z. I think Gen Alpha might be a little bit too young to be traveling on their own, but Gen Z is definitely like, they don't want the norm. They want different, and being able to do some sort of like expedition cruise is going to be the way that happens. How can I book? Obviously with a travel advisor. And then they just put some of their information about how all this data was collected. So just really interesting to see that more numbers than ever are going to be doing some sort of cruising in 2026. And then we get on over to Travel Market Report's River Cruise Outlook. Based on things that happened in 2025, I found some of these key findings so interesting. Nearly 9 out of 10 advisors sell river cruises. 2/3 of agencies and advisors with over 20 years of experience sell river cruise vacations of longer than 1 week. This one was really interesting to me. Canadian advisors, 62%, sell a higher number of vacations that are more than 1 week long compared to US advisors, 54%. I feel like that's most likely a cultural thing where in Canada it is more, and I feel a lot of other countries, they want you to take downtime from work. And so, especially like when I think about European travelers, they're on vacation for 2 or 3 weeks, whereas 2 weeks is the top that most Americans are able to get as vacation time at all for like the whole year. So that is why that number makes sense to me. That's also why I'm like, we gotta change things here, but that's a whole other discussion. But it makes sense that Canadians are able to sell longer cruises, meaning they're able to generate more revenue on river cruises for more than a week because there's more money to be had in that. Europe is obviously a top destination for river cruising, with the US and Egypt and Africa as the two running behind it. And then within Europe, Germany, France, Hungary, and the Netherlands are the most popular river cruise destination, which makes complete sense because that is where a lot of river cruises either start or end the river cruises. More than half of advisors said that their clients prefer taking river cruise vacations in May and September. November to March cruises are great for travel during the lean and less expensive winter seasons. And I mean, that's Christmas market season. And Christmas market season is kind of starting a little bit earlier, as well as Christmas markets start opening before the Thanksgiving holidays. So able to take advantage of a slightly longer period than what people would be, which is pretty much like 3 or 4 weeks, that like end of November to end of December. Cruising with fewer people is the top motivator for taking a river cruise, say 9 out of 10 advisors. Use this in your marketing, because I was recently talking to somebody about this, about like, will I be bored? And I'm like, I feel like it's going to depend on what you're looking for and what you're wanting to do on a river cruise. Because that's one of my favorite things, is that as a mostly solo traveler, I'm able to like meet different people on river cruises. But this person was part of a couple, and he was like, actually, I don't like it for that reason, because everybody wants to chit chat, but I go on vacation with my spouse and I just want to spend time with my spouse. But it's a different type of culture on a river cruise, because I mean, if you're on an ocean cruise and there's hundreds of people, you're kind of like a blip. So people are oblivious to each other sometimes. Whereas like you are definitely going to know the familiar faces with just 100 or 200 people that are on board. So that was an interesting observation as well. Other reasons are for easy access to the city centers, and that river cruising offers a more relaxed alternative to ocean cruising. I personally feel yes and no, because sometimes I feel like a river cruise is much more active than an ocean cruise, where like you can just relax and you have your sea days. You don't have that on the rivers. You're in port doing something every single day. Or, I mean, if you wanted to skip out, you could also skip out, but there is stuff to be had all the time on the river ships. The destination and itinerary of the cruise moves the needle for clients, say 4 out of 5 advisors. Other factors that influence clients are combining pre- and post-land vacations, and that a river cruise is seen as a better alternative to a guided land tour. I feel like this is going to be marketing gold. I feel like a lot of these, like the standard bus tours and things like that, those are going to start to phase out, and people are going to want to be more invested in these types of trips when it comes to like river cruising and expedition cruising. I feel like you just get a little bit more of like the local culture and a little bit more immersive than being in a bus. I feel also that because you have one vessel, so one ship that you get to unpack and then repack, or you don't have to do that. You have to do that at the hotels on a bus tour, but you don't have to do that on a ship. And I feel like a lot more people are wanting to have that relaxing. Like, they don't want to have the hustle and bustle. Their hustle and bustle is being immersed into the culture, not having to be transported from place to place to place when they're on a trip. 3/4 of the advisors expect to see a growth in clients from the senior segment born before 1950. Other growing segments are couples and empty nesters. Pre and post cruise packages, ground transfers, and air are the most common products booked via the river cruise line. Insurance is an important add-on for 9 out of 10 advisors. More than 9 out of 10 advisors say that they have persuaded clients to opt for a river cruise instead of a land vacation, and I hope it's because of some of the reasons that we just mentioned. River cruise clients tend to be affluent, with half of the advisors saying that they are their highest paying segment. Again, if you're new to cruising, you may want to start with ocean. You may want to start with river if you have that in your demographic. But it is really cool to see about the numbers. And this is just like a reflection as you're preparing for a new year of bookings and all that. What are the products that you want to be selling? Because if you put in a lot of effort to sell one river cruise, how much does that compare to selling maybe 10 ocean cruises? And that's such a nuanced comparison too, because it's going to depend on, like, is this a family? Is this a group of couples? What types of cabins are they booking into? But I can almost bet that you could probably work less and make more money selling to a river cruise client compared to like a mass market or a premium cruise client. This is also just really great to know that if you have clients that have been with you for some time, this is just like a natural like step on the ladder, a step on the staircase to people that are wanting to be a little bit more adventurous or try different things, or want to like really learn the heart of destinations and not just like the main touristy areas. This might like perk their ears to be more interested and apt to doing a river cruise. The share of advisors upselling a follow-up river cruise every time has tripled from 4% in 2024 to 11% in 2025. So that indicates to me an also increase in satisfaction with taking river cruises. The average per person spend on a river cruise trip is $9,316. Agencies typically sell more than ICs. Cost of the river cruise, concerns about rerouting due to water levels, and expensive airfares are the prime challenges in selling river cruises. Before I go on to that, I'm thinking, so cost of the river cruise is the primary concern. And I feel like that's one of the primary concerns, prime challenges, because there is so much more that's included. Like, you can't compare a river cruise with an ocean cruise, depending on the type of ocean cruise that it is, because there are much more inclusions. So like if you're taking, and maybe this is going to be, I was going to compare Celebrity, but Celebrity now has their own river cruise brand. So I mean, if you're taking like a premium cruiser and bumping them up to river cruise, I could see why they might be concerned about the cost. But this is where you need to sell and market the side of, but did you know all of these things are included and you don't have to shell out any more money for X, Y, and Z. All you have to do is pay your airfare, your transfers, and then you're done. Everything else is taken care of for you. So, and not even just the inclusions, but the added benefits. Like, you are on a more private type of atmosphere. You are also more, because there's less people on board, there's also a higher crew to cruiser ratio, which means you get like really ultra personalized. They know your wants, they know your desires. If you have special dietary needs, they definitely remember that. So it's a also different level of service and also a different level of care. It's definitely a higher level of care because it's just smaller quarters and people just get to know you better in that instance. 2/3 of the advisors say that overcrowding is an issue for river cruising. This has been one of the things that I have been concerned about with so many additional people coming into the river cruise landscape. However, 56% of the advisors also feel that more cruise lines also increase the visibility for river cruising overall. Word of mouth referrals and current and past clients continue to be the top lead generation sources. More than half of the advisors say that they use AI for improved booking and management tools. They also track real-time flight and hotel availability and work at enhancing personalization for travelers using AI. There's a lot of neat stats in this report, so I just recommend that you go ahead and check out the report. But some of the interesting parts that I really want to chat on are the preferred travel months for river cruising. Obviously, since the main segment is that European market, a lot of people don't like sailing in the winter months. But actually, no. So November and December is 15% and 19% as preferred months. Outside of that, and of course, January, February, March, July and August are the lower months for river cruising. And I feel like that's probably just higher season. And a lot of the people that are able to river cruise just don't want to be in that area when there's going to be a lot of other people. It is interesting that May and September is the highest, most popular month, followed by May. Then we have June and October, and then April. So definitely a lot of spring and fall. And I kind of feel like that also resonates in terms of like having the best weather. If you're planning any sort of groups, I feel like this is going to help you out a lot in terms of determining like when would you want to plan a group for. I would also think about like what are the certain seasons of river cruising, especially when it comes to Europe. Tulip time is only a set season. Same thing with Christmas markets is only a set season. Then I think of like Rhone River cruises. Lavender season is a certain season. Truffle season is a certain season. So taking into consideration some of these seasonalities also when you're thinking about like either pitching river cruises to your clients or trying to put together a group trip. The key motivators, I think this is going to be really important for your marketing when you are putting those marketing messages out there. The key motivators for taking a river cruise vacation: cruise on a smaller ship with fewer guests. This is becoming increasingly more important to people when they're figuring out their travel plans. There's easy access to city centers. It's a more relaxed alternative to ocean cruising. It's a bucket list experience for a lot of people. And I actually just got an inquiry from a friend who wanted to take her parents that they just wanted to be able to experience Europe for the first time, and they wanted to be able to do it through a river cruise. The value, like I mentioned before, there's a lot of inclusions that river cruising offers. And then the bottom three are enjoy a sense of exclusivity or unique lifestyle, interest in themed cruises, or celebrating personal occasions. When you're thinking about like the psychographics of who is taking a river cruise, the top at 83% comes in at these people are well-traveled. They do prefer that all-inclusive product, and they are first-time river cruisers. And I would say they are not, I wouldn't say, because many river cruises are budget conscious in a way. Like they want to be spending their money in the right ways. where other types of budget conscious travelers, they just want to be spending bare minimum and getting the most out of it. So I mentioned this in the all-inclusive aspect because you're able to get more bang for your buck river cruising compared to most, not all, ocean cruises. They're also interested in sailing on the special interest sailing. They do prefer luxury hotels and resorts. They like traveling to exotic destinations. They prefer ocean cruises. I would hope so. They are first-time cruisers is definitely at the bottom, and they prioritize sustainable and eco-conscious cruise options, which that probably has a lot to do with like wanting that small ship type of experience. Destination. So what are some of the top influencers when it comes to taking a river cruise? Destination is at the top. They're most interested in the destination the itinerary cruises to. They often combine land vacations, so you're able to kind of like sandwich in a couple different travel experiences all in one. They see river cruises as a really great way, an alternative to those escorted guides. They want cultural experiences with the locals, and they're open to exploring river cruising destinations beyond just Europe. There's a lot more under there, but I'm trying to be a little concise in here too. Things that determine somebody's satisfaction when they're on a river cruise, itinerary is definitely number one, followed by the quality of food and wine. Third, again here, this all-inclusive pricing that it includes gratuities and wine or liquor, that value for money. See, I'm like, luxury travelers are willing to spend money on these things. Some of them do have like budget at the top, but they're not going to question the budget as long as they see that there's a really great value. I love seeing that number 5 on here is the service level of staff, because it is definitely a higher service level. I feel like too, staff might be a little bit happier on river cruise ships because there's less amount of people on board. So it's less to keep track of overall. Activities is another one of why people are satisfied with river cruising. So where is this expected to grow in terms of sales? And I feel like this can help you in terms of like where you should be looking for clients who might be interested in river cruising. So significantly, seniors born before 1964, couples, empty nesters, and luxury or affluent travelers, with solo travelers and leisure groups very, very close behind. Not sure, this is going to have like a lower percentage is when it comes to weddings, incentives or conference groups, and multi-generational family trips. It's interesting, the incentive and conference groups. I would say that the pushback there is going to be the budget. That a lot of these groups don't have that type of luxury budget to have this experience. But I feel that the all-inclusivity of just cruises in general, not even ocean cruises, lends itself to that budget, that you're not being nickel and dime, that a lot of things are included. So that number is interesting to me. It's also interesting to me because there is a cruise line that has been breaking out. I think they either launched this year or they're launching next year, called Transcend Cruises. And they were built specifically for that incentive and conference market. Products booked through the river cruise, pre and post packages, ground transfers, air are the most popular. Incidents of travel insurance, very high. So again, like if you're thinking about upselling, this might be a really great, and like an easy sell, like an easy sell to sell into the river, but then an easy sell to also add something on top of that. Most are dependent on like who they sell for travel insurance. It's going to depend on the cruise line, followed by I arrange it through a third party. Behavioral trends in researching river cruises. Clients were planning trips, and I introduced the idea of river cruising is mostly how people happen upon river cruising. They come up with a specific river cruise line, and then I just book it. They come up with a specific river cruise line, but if I don't think it's right, I recommend something else is the next one. And then the bottom two on here are they generally aren't familiar with river cruising and they come to me for my recommendations, or they come with a general idea of river cruise lines and then we connect about the options. So that was also pretty neat to see. Clients budget for river cruises. So 52%, they are among my highest spending clients where money is not an issue. And then 46%, their spending is about the same as my average client. So that's interesting. That's good to know. Frequency of upselling a follow-up river cruise occasionally is kind of like the top one. So it's a little bit higher that every time. Wow, it is a lot higher. So in 7%, every time was 7%. In 2024, it was 4%. In 2025, it bumped up to 11%. So that's great to see that people are more apt to sell. Kind of like what we were talking about. It's a higher percentage in ocean cruising. It's starting to trend a little higher when it comes to river cruising. Average spend per person, we had mentioned it was in that 9,000 mark. And that's kind of what I'm seeing across all advisors based on this report. The high end is going to be about 9,800 and the low end is right at that 9,000. So this is per person what people are willing to invest for their river cruise vacation. Challenges faced is the total cost, water levels, expensive airfares. That's really interesting that one is also the barrier, but it kind of makes sense again because people are traveling to a different place to get on some of these river cruises. Is overcrowding a concern for river cruising? Somewhat. It's becoming a growing concern, followed by, yes, it's a notable issue, not yet, but likely in the future, which I feel like that's what makes river cruising so special. So I also feel like, is this a conversation that we need to have with the river cruise lines or people who are entering the market? Do we just have to be more, hey, you should reconsider that, even though it's a really great product, because you have to think about long-term sustainability, and you also don't want to burn out clients before it gets like really great for everybody else. Those are kind of like what I'm thinking about. Perceived effects of new river cruise product launches, oversupply in some destinations. Ooh, that is exactly what I was feeling with it's exciting, but then it's also like, oh, this is going to be too much and you're going to ruin a good thing is my biggest concern. Increase in consumer interest / visibility for river cruising overall. Pressure on existing river cruise brands to elevate product quality. That is an interesting one because I could see this. Like, you're really going to have to, like, what sets you apart with the others is really what that line is going to answer. Greater product / destination variety resulting in increased sales. I could see that as well. I mean, it's not like we can create new rivers, but you can launch your product in rivers that maybe aren't as popular in certain areas. But again, we do have to think about the sustainability, because I just heard one of my travel advisor friends who wanted to do a unique itinerary that got canceled because of the water levels, and now she's doing like a classic itinerary. So that's kind of like a Debbie Downer, and there's no recompense, especially for somebody who's a seasoned traveler. Being like, going to the same destinations is a little bit like bah humbug when you've been expecting a whole new type of experience. Major lead generation channels. So we've talked about word of mouth referrals, current or past clientele. It's also through the advisor's personal experience specialization. So if you are marketing that you're going on this, social media is another one. Digital marketing. I keep talking about that, having your multi-channel approach when it comes to digital marketing. Consumer events is another one. Also leads that might come from your host or consortia. Print advertising. Interesting here. At the very bottom is church groups, TV or radio marketing, and private organizations or clubs. All right, top selling river cruise lines. AMA Waterways is at the top. And I feel like that's because of a lot of the marketing that they do. They do market to travel advisors a lot. So, of course, you're going to be selling that a lot if that's the product that's in your face a lot of the time. And I don't mean to say that rudely. It's a really great product. I love Ama. Always a really great experience, and they are doing a lot to invest in you. So I feel like naturally, if a company is doing a lot to invest in you, you want to make that investment right back. Viking Cruises, I feel, is popular because of all of their advertisements everywhere, but they are second when it comes to the top selling lines, followed by Avalon, Uniworld, Scenic, Tauck, Emerald, and then of course there's a couple of the newbies or a couple of the smaller cruise lines finishing out that one. Supplier support needed to better sell river cruises. I'm giggling because fam trips is number one. Does that surprise you? I don't think that should surprise you. Product or destination training, that one surprises me at the top. Maybe it's more destination training. I just feel like so many of the lines have great training programs, or they're having frequent training programs, that I don't know why that would be something that's even more needed, but all right. Ready to use marketing materials and rich media content is number 3. Well, there is the cruise content library, guys, and we do have a lot of media and content in there to help sell. So if you're in the cruise content library and you're wanting something more or something different, let me know. So that I've got a couple of ideas and things that I'm working on for as we round out 2025 and 2026. But you can also invest in a product like that and not have to rely on the big cruise lines, because that's the difference with the river cruise lines as well. They are marketing their product as well. And so they're creating assets for them to be able to market, not necessarily for you to be able to market as a travel advisor. Not saying they shouldn't have something available, but I'm also just giving you a clue in. I feel like this is also why you need to have your own assets, which if you're going on these fam trips, you can make amazing assets. And that's a lot of what I teach if you ever do end up on one of my content creation trips with me. All right, let's keep on going. Impact of AI. Ooh, improved booking and management tools. Heck yes to that. Real-time flight and hotel availability. Enhanced personalization for travelers. Simplified multi-destination trip. Man, I just love that you guys are clearly notating that AI makes your life so much easier if you're using AI tools as part of like your booking process and your customer experience. And then there's a couple of some information about the different advisors. So most of the advisors have 30 plus years experience. Followed by that is 6 to 10 years of experience, and then 2 to 5 years of experience. So it kind of runs the gamut. Either you're very experienced or you're kind of like mid-experienced, almost like a newbie selling this product. So that's cool to see. Then it kind of like goes by different ages of who is selling the different river cruises. And then annual gross sales. So or anticipated change in annual gross sales. So some over this past year most people have had like a 19% increase when it comes to those sales. Most advisors are from the Travel Leaders Group Consortium. If you're in the US, if you're in Canada, that's Ensemble. So yeah, really interesting stats and all that. I'd love to know, like, what are you thinking about some of this information that comes from these reports? Is this really helpful to know? Is this helping you to also market a little bit better when it comes to thinking about, like, I want to capture more of the market share of river cruises? These are some of the things that I need to do, or some of the things that I need to position myself, because especially if you don't have a client base, that was where a lot of the seasoned pros were saying they got a lot of their sales from. So kind of relying on that digital marketing to get other sales. And I think of like YouTube. I think go back to the macro content. I think of YouTube. I think of blogging. And like if you're wanting to sell Tulip Time River Cruises for that springtime, you need to be putting content out, especially written content out now so that all the Googles and everything, when people start thinking about springtime, that's like Christmas market or Christmas market type of content now. Social media, it's good. Macro content, not so good. Like blogging, you're kind of late for it to be indexed on the Googles already. So there is a seasonality, and on top of seasonality, you also have to know just how things work, because once you post it, doesn't mean that things like Google are automatically going to find your articles. It's going to take a little bit of time, so you have to give them that time to find it. So let me know what you thought about this trends and some of the trends and what you might do to kind of like pivot your marketing as we're going into the new year to capture some of this increase in sales volume when it comes to river cruises. All right, have a great week, everybody. Thanks for joining me on the podcast today. Remember to check out the show notes for all relevant links and resources from today's show. See you next time.